Jewel was born into wealth, but wanted to climb up the ladder on her own merit. Because of this, she was elated when she was finally promoted to the division director position in her grandfather's company. After work, she drove the scenic route toward her family's beach house to spend the weekend and celebrate her promotion. She was nearing town when she suddenly pulled on the brakes. A man appeared seemingly from nowhere and was right in front of her car. However, her reflexes were a tad too late. There, on a long stretch of road with no houses in sight, lay an unconscious man. Her mind blanked. The only thought on her mind was, "I'm doomed." Mind blank, she approached the man and felt for a pulse. It was there, albeit faint. She carried the man to the car and drove to the closest hospital while running on adrenaline. A throng of nurses and doctors immediately surrounded them. One nurse approached her and asked what happened. She panicked and said the first thing that popped into her mind. "I found him like that." "On the road?" the nurse confirmed. "Yes," she answered, a tad too fast. All she thought about was that she shouldn't be found out. Her family was well known. It could cause damage to their family name. More than that, it may negatively affect the company. "So it's probably a hit and run then. I'll have to notify the authorities. Excuse me," the nurse explained. That froze Jewel on the spot. "You shouldn't have moved him from the road. You could have made his injuries worse," the doctor reprimanded as they checked on his injuries. "We'll have to take him to the operating room," he added, before wheeling the bed towards another room. The nurse who talked to her approached her again and asked, "Do you know the victim? Should we call anyone else?" "No, I'm his fiancée," she lied. "Very well, come with me to the waiting room. We'll come get you when you can see him," the nurse said. She followed numbly. She absently tightened her arms on the man's fanny pack she held. Once inside the room, she started to empty the man's pack and examine his belongings. With shaking hands, she picked up the man's ID. Terence Matthews, it said. She rifled through his wallet and found a single business card. It looked old and worn. It was for a home for elders. Also in his wallet was a picture of him and an old woman. Must be his grandmother, Jewel thought to herself. While waiting, she decided to come up with a lie. If the nurse indeed called the police, she has to have her story straight. A uniformed officer entered the room and approached her as if by magic. "Hi, Ms. he began. "Lewis, Jewel Lewis," she introduced. "Hello, Ms. Lewis. Can you tell me what happened?" "Well, I was on my way to see him when I saw a man lying down in the road, so I stopped. I was so shocked when I realized it was him," she relayed, exactly as rehearsed. "The nurses told me he was in running gear when he was found. Why was he out running if he knew you were coming?" the police continued to prod. "Well, he didn't. I was going to surprise him," she prevaricated. "And how are you related to Mr. Matthews?" "I'm his fiancée," she repeated the lie she told the nurse. Is there proof of that?" the police asked. He was making it very obvious that he suspected her. Still, she stood her ground. Well, she decided she'd live the lie until Terence woke up and proved her claims wrong. "I'm afraid there's none I can show you right now. We aren't fond of taking pictures, I'm afraid," she explained. "Your engagement ring will be proof enough, but I don't see one on your finger," the police continued. "Oh, that. It's getting resized at the moment," she was quick to explain. Was the man's only reply. "Well then, I'll keep in touch. We'll investigate this thoroughly, Ms. Lewis." He said it like it was a threat. She bristled inside but schooled her expression to a calm one. "I understand. Please let me know if you find anything else." The police just nodded and left quietly. A few hours later, the same nurse who brought her there escorted her to the ICU. "He has several fractured bones, but those can heal in a few weeks. What's worrisome is that he's now in a coma. He probably hit his head when he fell onto the road," the doctor explained to her. He kept talking, but she failed to digest everything else. One word stuck with her. Coma. The guy she hit was in a coma. Once again, her mind blanked. She came when the doctor asked. "He can be moved to a regular room tomorrow. Would you like him in a private room or a shared room?" "A private room, please," she said without thinking. She had money to spare. It was her conscience that was eating at her. The same night, a private room was arranged. She decided to stay there for the night. She promised herself that she would take care of Terence until he was well enough. That was the least she could do. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right, she told herself. She thought of calling her parents, but knew it would result in chaos. Her parents would want her to do the right thing. They wouldn't care about the family name or the business. They only cared about what was best for her, even if it meant she had to surrender herself to the authorities. Not that they would allow her to be brought to charges without a fight, but they would make her do the right thing. She couldn't bring herself to do that. If she could, she would have admitted to it in the first place. She wouldn't have to spin such elaborate lies. No, she dug herself in deep enough. She'd live through her lies. With that in mind, the first thing she did as soon as the sun rose the next day was check on Terence. Fortunately, his stats remained stable through the night, and he'll be transferred to the private room in a few hours, and so Jewel was off to do something even harder. She planned to visit Terence's grandmother at the retirement home. Once she provided her name, she was promptly escorted to a beautifully decorated room. Inside was the woman in the picture. Terence's grandmother sat on the bed while watching TV. Upon her knock, the old lady turned off the TV and turned to her with a smile. She then picked up a pen and a notepad and wrote, "Hi." Tears gathered in Jewel's eyes. "You can't speak." She almost choked on the question. "Oh, that was rude of me, sorry." But the old lady just smiled and nodded kindly. "Hi, Alice, can I call you that?" she asked belatedly. Once again, the old lady just smiled and nodded. She then wrote, "How may I help you?" "Oh, that." She burst into tears as she recounted what happened. She told Alice everything without leaving anything out. As she told her story, Alice simply listened and offered her a box of tissues. Once she's done, Alice writes, "How is he now?" "Oh, he's better. Well, physically at least. He's still in a coma," she explained. And then tears came again. She waited as Alice wrote on her notepad and said, "He's attractive, no?" Jules laughed at that. "That he is," she answered through her tears. "Even with the bandages, he's strikingly handsome." They talked some more before she said goodbye and promised to visit again soon. From there, she went back directly to the hospital. It was a great thing she did then too, since Terence was transferred to the room soon after. It was a good thing she drove on a Friday. The problem was that she had to report back to work in her new department on Monday. Fortunately, she came directly from work, so she had her laptop with her. And so while Terence slept, she called her mom. Her mother also happened to be the company's vice president. "Hey, Mom," she began. "Hi, baby," her mother answered sweetly. Her mother and father had always been affectionate. Because of that, they still called her endearments from time to time. This tore at her. She never lied to her parents. They had a very open and supportive relationship, so they never kept secrets from each other, no matter how harsh or hurtful it may be. They share everything. The fact that she was lying and would continue to do so ate at her. "Mom, I'm sick with the flu. I don't think it would be a great idea to show up at the office on Monday," she hedged. "Are you okay, honey? Where are you? We'll go there right now." Her mom's worry can be heard even on the phone. No, I'm fine. I don't want you to catch whatever I have. The employees as well. What should I do about Monday? I have my laptop with me, but would that be okay?" "Of course that's okay. I'll explain everything to them. But are you even well enough to work on Monday?" her mom asked. "I think I can. Well, I should. Don't worry about me. I'll show up at work as soon as I'm well enough. Anyway, I have to go, Mom. I'll keep you posted. Feel better soon, honey. Take care." With work arrangements addressed, she focused her time and energy on nursing Terence back to health. She began to talk to him after the nurses told her it would be good for the patient. The police visited the hospital a few more times, but she continued to spin more lies. He asked why nobody from Terence's circle knew of her. "We kept our relationship under wraps. We didn't want to introduce each other to our respective families until we were sure we'd end up together. We haven't been engaged long, so we haven't had time to meet with his friends." The lie came out easily. In the end, the cop was still obviously convinced that she was involved in the accident. Before he left, he said, "I'll never stop until I get to the bottom of this, Ms. Lewis. I'm sure I'll see you again soon." This shook her to the core, but she remained outwardly calm as she shook the cop's hands. Terence will wake up soon enough to set things straight, she thought to herself. Weeks passed, and Terence remained in a coma. At first, she was able to stay the entire week to care for him, but after that, she had to commute to and from work to juggle her work commitments and caring for Terence. While she kept a vigil at his bedside, she began to journal. She wrote about everything she could ever tell anyone. She wrote about Terence a lot. It became a habit. A couple of weeks later, Terence finally woke up. As if fate had a hand on it, it was at a time when Jewel was there for a visit. "Who are you?" Terence asked her after the doctors left. "I'm Jewel." She was just cut off by a nurse who'd just returned. "You're lucky to have a fiancée like her. Not only is she beautiful, but she's very caring too," she blabbed as she checked on his vitals. After she left, Terence rounded on her. "You're my fiancée? I may be a bit banged up and I don't know what happened, but I know for a fact you're not my fiancée," he said with accusing eyes. "Let's talk about it some other time." She tried to brush his question off. "What would you like to eat?" She made sure to keep the conversation going. She continued to visit every day, not only because she was obligated to, but also because she enjoyed his company. He was kind and funny. They shared the same interests too. They also exchanged stories about Alice. Jewel continued to visit Alice during the weekends. One day, however, she left the room to speak with the doctor and left her journal in the room. Terence thought it was just a regular book and browsed through it. When he realized that it was actually a diary, he was about to close it when he saw his name, and so he continued reading. Jewel found him like that. Her insides felt cold instantly. "I can explain," she began. "Yeah, and how exactly would you do that? And for how long do you plan to play me the fool?" Terence demanded. "You know what? Get out and don't ever come again." Jewel had no choice but to leave, saying a tearful sorry. That weekend, though, she did one last act of kindness she could afford to do. She drove to Alice's, picked her up, and brought her to Terence's hospital room. "Granny!" he exclaimed. "Wait, slow down," he said laughingly when he saw his grandmother writing furiously. "Are you okay? Jewel had been taking care of you since the accident. I'm sorry I couldn't be here, but Jewel had been visiting me regularly too to keep me updated," her note said. Terence looked at Jewel, who remained standing at the door. He reached for her hand and said, "I now understand why you told me once that everyone deserves the chance to make things right, because you did that and continued to do so. Thank you," he said. Jewel reached for his hand and said, "Thank you for giving me the chance to make things right."